Hi and welcome to The Winning Factor. I'm Alan Aitken, and on this show each week we take a look at some upcoming races in Hong Kong and try to isolate an angle to the race that might find us the winner. Well, FWD Champions Day, a very big day on the calendar in Hong Kong on Sunday, and of course all across the Hong Kong Jockey Club website you'll find interviews, videos, track work reports, everything you might possibly need to get involved with the three big Group 1s on Sunday. And I'm going to get involved in one of the Group 1s on our show today. But first of all, I'm going to take a little detour down an aspect of international racing these days that I guess we all think about. But I've tried to put a little bit more detail into it, and that is the Homeground Advantage. Now, we're all familiar with it as a concept in human sports, and I would think that it's more important in horse sport because the horses don't really know why they've suddenly found themselves in a different environment, so it can be more unsettling for them. But anyway, I've had a look at some figures going back over the years, all the way back to 2010, and for the purposes of this study I'm only using the international races in Hong Kong in December and those on Champions Day at this time of year each year. So that's 7 races a season, and I've gone back, as I said, to 2010. And first of all I want to look at the general idea of Homeground Advantage. Now we get the odd visitor in other races, but using only those 7 international races, the only real measure we have for expectations on horse performance is the final betting market. Now, over time, anywhere in the world, it's a powerful indicator of the real winning chances of a runner. So I've looked at the final odds of 944 runners at Sha Tin since September 2010, pitting the locally trained horses versus the visitors. Now, I don't know about you, but I've often looked at the odds for some of the locals in these races, felt they were being overbet just because they live here, and the reality is that yes, they might be slightly overbet, but not as much as I would have thought. Overall, the visiting horses as a group are only slightly underrated. But we can change that picture when we break it down by country. And this second graphic, perhaps the first big Japanese win overseas came with Fujiyama Kenzan in the Hong Kong Cup in 1995. They've been a fixture in our internationals ever since, even before becoming the global force they are now. So as you can see, the Japanese horses are punching well above expectations in international races in Hong Kong. And at the bottom of the graphic, you see that without them, the Homeground Advantage is not overestimated at all. In fact, it becomes the foreign raiders who look to be overplayed in the betting. So back to Sunday's racing, and the first event I'm going to take a look at is race 3, and our winning factor here, the draw. It's a very interesting class 3 this, with some attention on 5 newcomers stepping out for their first Hong Kong runs. A couple more we haven't seen much of, but they'll all have their hands full with 2 horses that we have been watching. Danny Shum trained Supreme Lucky, a winner of 3 of his 6 starts, and the unbeaten David Hall trained Prince of Porty. So Prince of Porty won down the straight at his first start, but was much more impressive when he graduated from Class 4 at his second start, his first run around a turn. This is race 431, and he's the horse with the white face from gate 2. Zach Purton aboard in blue and grey colours, and he's not the fastest to jump, but certainly fast enough to get a perfect run behind what was a testing gallop early and still a good gallop mid-race. Look at the heat map. It's something to look for any time in a race, is solid, consistent speed, and that usually returns very reliable form going forward. Now, even the final 400 metres, which I've classed here as average, was still a half length faster than average on the day, so we had faster than average for all the sections. Prince of Porty travels very smoothly and frankly is never ever going to lose. Now, he rises in class and he hasn't been seen in a race since that run in February, but in general David Hall's horses do tend to race better off a break than they do coming back to the races quickly. Meanwhile, his main rival, we have seen him very recently on Derby Day. This is race 510, green colours, red cap, and Supreme Lucky is in gate 13. Now, after a spectacular defeat at his prior run when he missed the jump 6 or 7 lengths, he gets okay away for Matthew Poon on this occasion, but isn't quick enough to hold a position. He drifts back to midfield, he's 3 wide, but with a back to follow. And then when the speed slackens mid-race, I think that's key because he's able to get travelling and balanced before unleashing a withering sprint to clear out in the home stretch, with more in the tank. Now, the deep field horses that we've seen in Hong Kong have mostly had that ability to produce a big acceleration in the straight, and this guy certainly has it. His finishing section there certainly faster than Prince of Porty's, and the track only running a little bit faster on that day. But on the map, well, he's Supreme Lucky by name. He's not that lucky at the barrier draw. He's had double figure gates at 4 of his 6 runs, and again he's presented with barrier 13 on Sunday. So he's going to be looking for a similar position, wide with cover in midfield, and looking to balance up for that big finish. Meanwhile, Prince of Porty, well, he wasn't perfectly drawn down the straight on debut, but gate 2 was very handy for him last time, and while he does have 1 or 2 under him with some speed, gate 7 looks no hardship in this race. The pace doesn't look crazy, but we have the regular front runner Super Fortune, and he should set a genuine speed under Angus Chung. So the tip in race 3, Prince of Porty. His winning factor, the draw. Certainly his rival has a quicker finish on him than Prince of Porty on what we've seen so far, but I can see that the draw is going to do Prince of Porty some favours, while his main rival, well, he's got a few obstacles to jump. Now, the other race I am going to look at for Sunday is race 7, and this is the Group 1 Champions Mile, where our winning factor is the map. Now, it's one of our highlights on the day, obviously. Great to see a couple of good quality visitors, and Beauty Joy in the Derby winner voyage bubble also hold some interest, but the market and the race are mostly going to be about Hong Kong's champion Golden 60, looking for win 25 from 29 starts, and his Hong Kong mile nemesis California Spangle. Now, most recently Golden 60 won the Gold Cup, but we're going to go back a couple of starts to the Stewards Cup, where he met California Spangle, who was coming off defeating Golden 60 in the Hong Kong mile, but Romantic Warrior was favourite to beat them both. This is race 375, and in gate 3, California Spangle in the red and yellow colours wasn't perfect away, but his natural pace soon had him in front. But from gate 2, Golden 60 was also quickly into the box seat on the leader's back in those slow early sections. Now, even though Zach Purton on the leader cranks up the speed sharply from the 800 metre turn, Golden 60 was well into his rhythm at that stage and had no trouble increasing his rate to stay with the leader. Then he turned for home just 2 lengths off the front, and that was the end of the story. His superior acceleration came into play, and he won decisively. So while it might seem to racing fans that the tactics are fairly simple and happen every time on California Spangle, they have been the subject of a lively philosophical debate behind the scenes between jockey Zach Purton and the horse's trainer, himself a former world-class jockey, Tony Cruz. Well, the last time that we saw California Spangle, Zach's version was given a bit of a test as he didn't lead as a 1.2 favourite in the Chairman's Trophy. This is race 566, and Zach has drawn 2, flies the gates on California Spangle, but in a more genuine tempo this time. He is soon pressed by Healthy Happy, also a runner on Sunday. And Zach makes the executive decision to sit behind him. Now, if you're going to roll the dice on doing something different, maybe when you're at 1.2 and the speed is genuine anyway, is the time to do it. He should win the race. But California Spangle, you see in the straight here, he's quite laboured when he goes to gather in the leader. He takes time to impose himself on the race, but ultimately comes clear to get it done, albeit with an unimpressive finishing section. Now, that win, despite being a win, looked like a vote for Tony Cruz's theory, as the trainer would like to see this horse absolutely leading and not handing up the front to other runners as he did there. And it certainly looked a vote for Cruz's theory, and that's going to be crucial going into this race on Sunday. Now, before the Stewards Cup, I went through a few ways that race might be going to play out, and ultimately the most obvious map was the one that did. Now, if we assume that Cruz has his way this time and California Spangle goes out to lead no matter what, then we have some different scenarios here too, with both favourites from wider gates making them just a little bit vulnerable. And don't listen to anyone who says draws don't matter in smaller fields. They definitely make things trickier. From another inside draw, California Spangle would get control straight away, but drawn under him here is Healthy Happy on the inside, who was up running second in the Fast Run Champions Mile 12 months ago when Golden 60 overhauled California Spangle at the finish, and we saw him lead that Chairman's Trophy last start. Now, he has the speed to be up the front, though, careful note, he isn't usually as fast to begin as California Spangle. But we also have the Derby winner, Voyage Bubble. He's surprised by going back early in the Derby from a wide draw, but he is more of a sprinter miler. This is more his distance, and he has as much early pace as California Spangle, and like Healthy Happy, he's drawn underneath him. So what that means is that Purton might get the lead, but he might not get the lead in a dawdle, although I would argue, and certainly Tony Cruz would argue, that a more even tempo suits this horse than a tempo that stops and starts. But for Vincent Ho on Golden 60, he won't have that automatic insertion behind the leader that he's had lately, or that he had in this race last year. As I've said, lurking on the back of California Spangle, he'll beat him all the time. But where will Golden 60 be on Sunday? He's never pushed out of the gates, and even without knowing what effect Blinker's first time will have on the New Zealander Agon, who was drawn under him, there looks enough speed there that Golden 60 might be forced to go back in the race to get closer than 3 wide, and that's a little bit of turning back the clock to the old days with him, giving his arch rival a much bigger start this time. And that's the kind of scenario that we saw bring Golden 60 undone this time, well, a little bit earlier than this time last year, when he was beaten in the Stewards Cup and the Gold Cup. Although he sprints faster than California Spangle, and probably significantly faster, maybe 3 or 4 lengths faster down the home straight, he can't afford to give an unlimited start to his arch rival. And the way this sets up, that could possibly happen. So the tip in race 7, the Champions Mile, is California Spangle. His winning factor, the map. Now, there are some little obstacles for both these horses to overcome on the map, but they still stand out as the best 2 chances in the race, and we know where California Spangle is going to be. He's going to be up in front, and of course, there is the possibility that the other leaders will work him, and that'll make it easier for Golden 60 to get to him in the straight. But the way this sets up, Golden 60 is going to have a lot more to do in the straight than he has in some of these recent runs, and I think that gives California Spangle his chance to turn the tables. Well, that's it from the winning factor this week. Enjoy Champions Day. We'll see you next time.